Near the Yulin People's Hospital No. 1 in Guangxi Province, China, many self-built houses stand close together. Although they are old and the surrounding environment is not ideal, the area remains densely populated due to its proximity to the hospital. On March 22, 2020, in a rented apartment less than 200 meters from the hospital, a nurse living on the second floor suddenly noticed that her bathroom drain was clogged. Sensing something unusual, she immediately called her boyfriend, a police officer, to check. The two then reported the issue to the landlord for further inspection. When they opened the drainage pipe, they were horrified to discover a large amount of shredded meat stuck inside. The bizarre sight left everyone stunned. Who would dump such a large quantity of meat down the drain? It was obviously not normal. The landlord immediately contacted the police. When authorities arrived at the scene and conducted a thorough inspection, they extracted a total of 2,368 pieces of shredded meat from the drainage system. But the most terrifying discovery was yet to come. The forensic analysis soon confirmed that it was human tissue. This chilling revelation cast an eerie atmosphere over the entire building. Police quickly began searching the most suspicious rooms. When they entered a rented apartment on the third floor, they found something even more horrifying: a rice cooker containing human flesh in the corner of the room, along with a black plastic bag filled with other body parts. Who was the victim? Why were they brutally murdered? And what about the tenant of the third floor room? Were they the killer? You are watching Grim Murders, where we explore the most mysterious and chilling criminal cases. As always, before we dive into today's case, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to support our channel. Now, let's go back to that moment in time and uncover the dark details behind this case. On the afternoon of March 22, 2020, as the tenant of the third floor room was on her way home from work, police arrested her on the spot. When people saw the suspect, they couldn't believe their eyes. A petite young woman, slender, with a ponytail and a gentle face, looking no different from an innocent schoolgirl. But behind that delicate appearance hid a horrifying truth. What she had done was so cruel, it was almost beyond belief. The suspect was Li Fengbing, 25 years old, a nurse at Yulin People's Hospital No. 1. It was all under the control of the game's operating system. No one could win forever. At the police station, Li Fengbing calmly confessed to her actions. She admitted to murdering La Bang, the deputy chief of the spinal surgery department at the hospital. Afterward, she disposed of the victim's body by dissolving it and flushing it down the drainage system. On the afternoon before this discovery, police had received a report from La Bang's wife, stating that her husband had been missing for 2 days. So, what was the relationship between Li Fengbing and La Bang? Why did everything escalate into such a gruesome murder? What was the true motive behind this crime? As the investigation unfolded, the answers gradually came to light. In 2017, Li Fengbing graduated from Guangxi Medical University with excellent academic performance. As a result, she received job offers from 3 hospitals through the university's recruitment program. A hospital in Nanning, the capital of the province, which offered the best career development opportunities. A hospital in Liuzhou, which promised the highest salary. And finally, Yulin People's Hospital No. 1, which neither offered a high income nor significant career advancement. However, it had one major advantage. It was close to Li Fengbing's hometown. The hospital was only a 2-hour taxi ride from Baise County, where her severely ill mother lived. This meant she could easily care for her mother if needed. After discussing with her father, Li Fengbing chose Yulin People's Hospital No. 1, giving up a high salary and promising career prospects to stay closer to her family. However, life did not go as she had hoped. Except for the Lunar New Year, Li Fengbing rarely had time to visit home. She rented a tiny 30-square-meter room in an alley behind the hospital. Although it was old, cramped, and run down, the rent was only 350 yuan per month, helping her save on living expenses. At the beginning of her job, Li Fengbing had to undergo a 3-year rotation training program, which was required for all young doctors and nurses before being permanently assigned to a department. Every few months, she would be transferred to a new department, forcing her to start from scratch each time, performing the most basic tasks like a trainee. Her salary was also very low, ranging from 2,000 to 3,000 yuan per month. Even though it could increase to 7,000 to 8,000 yuan after a few years, there was no guarantee that she wouldn't be reassigned again, forcing her to restart from zero. This rotation system not only prevented young nurses from feeling secure, but also made them feel like drifting duckweed, unstable and uncertain about their futures. In June 2018, Li Fengbing was assigned to the neonatal department, then later transferred to spinal surgery. One night, while working a night shift, she had a casual conversation with a colleague who introduced her to an online gambling game. During the first trial, Li Fengbing completely avoided answering when asked about this colleague's identity. Even when her lawyer pressed her, she refused to reveal their name, insisting they had nothing to do with her crimes. It wasn't until the second trial that a name finally emerged: Lu Moxia. Lu Moxia, the head nurse of the hospital, had accidentally introduced Li Fengbing to gambling. She herself had only played it to make some extra cash, as she was struggling financially due to high housing costs. According to Lu's testimony, the game was simple. At first, she played just for fun, but one day, she lost more than 10,000 yuan in a single round. Realizing its dangers, Lu Moxia decided to quit, uninstalled the game, and warned Li Fengbing to only play for fun. No one could have predicted that this casual suggestion would push Li Fengbing into a path of no return. This online lottery game didn't require players to register phone numbers or provide their identity. It allowed for unlimited betting, where players could choose numbers from 10 groups, 1 to 10, to place their bets. At first, new players would win a few rounds, luring them into believing that it was an easy way to make money. But in reality, the system was programmed to trap gamblers in a losing cycle. This caused Li Fengbing to become completely addicted. Initially, she bet a few hundred yuan, but soon, her bets escalated to tens of thousands. There were even days when she lost hundreds of thousands of yuan in a single round. Still, Li Fengbing refused to stop, believing that with just one big win, she could turn everything around. The highest amount Li Fengbing ever won in a single day was 100,000 yuan. But what she didn't realize was that no player could ever withdraw their winnings. Within a year, her 2 bank cards had processed a total of 2.9 million yuan in transactions with the online gambling platform. This was an enormous sum for a nurse who had not even worked for 3 full years. Gradually, the debts piled up beyond her control. She became desperate for money. At this moment, a horrifying plan began to take shape in her mind. Unwilling to accept defeat, Li Fengbing came up with the idea of borrowing money to gamble, win, and then pay off her debts, just like raising chickens for eggs. She started borrowing money from everywhere, using her mother's cervical cancer as an excuse to ask for financial help from colleagues. Her intelligent, outgoing, and hardworking personality had earned her people's trust. The hospital where she worked had a good reputation, so no one doubted her words. Initially, she borrowed only a few thousand yuan at a time and would repay part of it after receiving her salary, making others believe in her and continue lending. But gradually the frequency of borrowing increased, and the amounts became larger. Her colleagues' pockets turned into a revolving fund for Li Fengbing. But no matter how much she borrowed, it was never enough to fill the financial hole she was sinking into. In July 2019, Li Fengbing secured a loan of 300,000 yuan from the Bank of China through a financial aid program for medical staff in Yulin City. However, even this was not enough. She continued borrowing from colleagues, citing various reasons such as medical expenses for her mother, wedding preparations, and purchasing a home. Older nurses gradually became suspicious and refused to lend her money, but some younger ones, who had a good relationship with her, were still willing to help. Some even used their own personal information to borrow money on her behalf, 300,000 yuan per person. Because they trusted her, they never pressured her for repayment. By the time the case was exposed, that money had never been returned. Meanwhile, despite drowning in debt, Li Fengbing never sought help from her family. When she could no longer borrow from colleagues, she turned to online loan platforms. Within 6 months, her bank account history was flooded with loan transactions from various platforms. She borrowed from anywhere she could, regardless of the fact that most of these platforms had illegal interest rates reaching up to 36% per year. The deeper she fell into gambling, the more her mentality changed. She became 2 different people. On one hand, she would throw hundreds of thousands of yuan into online gambling every day without a second thought. On the other hand, her personal life was extremely frugal. She continued to live in the same rundown rental for 350 yuan per month. Even when she wanted to buy a refrigerator, she hesitated for a long time, unsure if she should. In the end, She only dared to order a cheap one for a few hundred yuan on Taobao, pouring hundreds of thousands into gambling, yet hesitating to spend a few hundred on herself. Perhaps that was the greatest contradiction and tragedy of Li Fengbing. By October 2019, she was deeply trapped in despair. Her debts were overwhelming, and she had no way out. She was forced to seek help from La Bang, the deputy head of the spinal surgery department. The 51-year-old man drove a BMW SUV and had a daughter in high school. Everyone said he was wealthy. When Li Fengbing asked to borrow money, La Bang agreed, but on one condition. 10:33. They arranged to meet at a high-end hotel near the hospital. For Li Fengbing, this was the fateful day that changed her life. When she entered the room, she was stunned to see La Bang had already removed all his clothes. She turned to leave, but he wouldn't let her go. Under his coercion, she had no choice but to comply. The next morning, she received 50,000 yuan. But money was not the most important thing. The humiliation was permanently etched into her mind. This was just the beginning. Despite her hatred and resistance, she was forced to meet La Bang multiple times. From October 2019 to February 2020, they met 13 times, and each time, he transferred money to her. By March 2020, she had received a total of 200,000 yuan. But La Bang was never satisfied. He constantly threatened her. "Do you think you can escape me? I have friends in the security bureau and the prosecutor's office. If you dare report me, I won't let you off." This fear and control pushed Li Fengbing to the brink. Initially feeling powerless, she began contemplating ending her own life. She attempted suicide 3 times. The first time, she prescribed herself 100 sleeping pills. She had long suffered from insomnia, sleeping only 3 to 4 hours per night. That time, she swallowed 80 pills, but instead of killing her, they only caused violent vomiting. The second time, she opened the gas valve overnight, but it didn't work. The third time, she took advantage of her job to steal 2 vials of insulin from the hospital and injected 800 units into her body. Yet, even death refused to take her. Li Fengbing continued to exist in a state of misery and resentment. In March 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, hotels stopped accepting guests. Unable to meet at a hotel, La Bang ordered Li Fengbing to rent an apartment near the hospital, promising to cover the rent. She had no choice but to comply. On the night of March 20th, La Bang arrived drunk at her apartment. The moment he stepped in, he removed his clothes and demanded her service. However, Li Fengbing was in the middle of an online gambling session and did not want to be disturbed. She kept making excuses, saying she hadn't eaten dinner, then saying she hadn't showered yet. This enraged La Bang. He began shouting and scolding her, accusing her of no longer being as enthusiastic as before. He even threatened to have her fired. After his outburst, he passed out on the bed, snoring loudly. Sitting at the edge of the bed, Li Fengbing clenched her fists. She thought about all the humiliation she had endured and felt overwhelming hatred. All the pent-up emotions made her unable to endure any longer. In her fury, she picked up her phone and searched. "If you hate someone, what should you do?" Among the search results, one suggestion stood out: make them disappear. As she continued scrolling, she found an article titled, "How the Weak Can Defeat the Strong." That was when she made her decision. Around 1 a.m., Li Fengbing grabbed a computer cable and slowly approached the bed. She wrapped the cable around La Bang's neck and pulled tight. La Bang jolted awake, struggling violently, and the two wrestled onto the floor. But Li Fengbing refused to let go. A few minutes later, La Bang's body gradually became motionless. Seeing this, Li Fengbing trembled as she touched his carotid artery to check for a pulse, but there was no response. Instinctively, she attempted CPR, but it was useless. La Bang had passed away. At that moment, fear surged through her, but soon after, she regained her composure and unlocked La Bang's phone using his fingerprint. She transferred 98,000 yuan into her account, but in the blink of an eye, most of the money was deducted by the online debt repayment system, leaving only 900 yuan. Falling into despair and unwilling to accept failure, Li Fengbing tried every possible way to extract all of La Bang's money. She took photos of his half-exposed body, his bank card, and his ID card, intending to use this information to apply for more loans. However, the identity verification system required live authentication, rendering all her efforts futile. Before dawn, she continuously searched on her phone for ways to completely destroy evidence, transfer car ownership, and deal with medical insurance without being detected. The more she tried to cover up, the more she realized she had reached a dead end. By 8 a.m. on March 21st, after committing the crime, Li Fuangbin showed no signs of panic or an attempt to flee. She dressed neatly and went to work at the hospital as if nothing had happened. Around 6 p.m., she returned to her rented apartment and began handling the victim's body. According to her later statements to her lawyer, she claimed this was done to prevent decomposition, delay discovery, and erase any traces. The process took a total of 20 hours, from 8 p.m. to 5 p.m. the following day. She spent more than 2,000 yuan on tools. What happened inside that rented apartment was truly gruesome and unimaginable. During that period, Li Fuangbin even returned to her old apartment to retrieve clothes and dispose of a pair of white shoes that had gotten dirty. She also searched La Bang's car for debt documents she had previously written. However, she found nothing because they had been stored in a cabinet at the victim's office. Later, a nurse from the spinal surgery department discovered those documents. To buy time and avoid suspicion, Li Fuangbin even impersonated La Bang by using his phone to text his wife. When his wife asked why her husband had not returned home for several days, Li Fuangbin replied that he was busy performing surgery in the suburbs. That evening, when La Bang's wife called, she replied via text, claiming that she was drunk and didn't want to talk. However, by the evening of March 22nd, an unsettling intuition led La Bang's wife to call the hospital to check her husband's schedule. She quickly discovered that he had no scheduled surgeries in the past few days. Sensing something was wrong, she immediately reported it to the police. The subsequent investigation quickly uncovered the horrifying truth behind La Bang's mysterious disappearance. After being arrested, Li Fuangbin was charged with murder and theft. With these charges, she faced the death penalty. When her father learned that his daughter was entangled in crime, he collapsed, unable to believe the truth. Trembling, he said, "Just 1 year. How could just 1 year destroy my daughter like this? What kind of person has she become?" Li Fuangbin was born in 1995 in a small village in Bobo County, Guangxi province. Her family was among the poorest in the village. To reach this remote place, one had to take a bus from Yulin City, then a long-distance coach, and finally walk a considerable distance. While most families in the village lived in 2- or 3-story houses, the Li family still resided in an old single-room house. As the eldest of 4 children, Li Fuangbin bore the heavy burden of being the big sister. Her mother suffered from uterine fibroids and was too weak to do hard labor, leaving all financial responsibilities on her father, who worked various odd jobs to support the family. Despite their poverty, her father believed that education was the only way to escape hardship. He himself had been accepted into a middle school, but had to drop out due to financial difficulties. Determined, he set a goal that none of his children would have to quit school. Thanks to his sacrifices, all 4 children continued their education. Besides Li Fuangbin, her second sister was admitted to a teacher's college in Guangxi, while her younger sister and youngest brother attended the best middle school in the county. Her father once proudly said, she inherited her mother's resilience. She studied while working part-time. Even when her mother was sick and she had to care for her siblings, she still ranked at the top of her class. Li Fuangbin could have attended the best high school in the county, but due to financial difficulties, her father decided she should enroll in a technical college instead. He reasoned that it would take only 5 years to graduate, whereas university would require at least 7 years before she could start working. She did not object and chose to study nursing, partly because she had experience caring for her mother. She became the pride of her family, one of the few students in the village to study in the provincial capital, Nanning. As a low-income student, she received a 6,000 yuan scholarship every semester. Even in university, she maintained outstanding academic performance and became the head of the Psychological Association's media department. Her father hoped that with her skills and knowledge, she would escape poverty, find a stable job, and settle in a big city. However, all these expectations crumbled. The harsh reality showed that Li Fuangbin was no longer the innocent girl her father once knew. After she started working, despite living just over an hour away from home, she rarely visited, even though the travel cost was less than 100 yuan. The distance between her and her family grew, and within a year, she had taken an unexpected turn. On August 20th, 2020, at the Guangxi High People's Court, the trial of Li Fuangbin's horrific case officially began. Throughout most of the hearing, she described her crimes in a calm tone, showing no signs of panic or remorse. The prosecution argued that this was a case involving a complex motive, tied to an illicit relationship and financial disputes. However, Li Fuangbin denied these allegations, claiming that her relationship with the victim was not voluntary, but rather forced and controlled. She insisted that attacking La Bang was the only way to escape her suffering. On December 22, 2022, the Guangxi High People's Court held an online appeal hearing. The case attracted widespread public attention as the final verdict on Li Fuangbin's fate was about to be announced. Her appeal was rejected, and the original death sentence was upheld, pending approval from the Supreme People's Court. This case is not just about crime, but also highlights a disturbing social issue. Li Fuangbin, once a poor but ambitious girl, became addicted to gambling and was dragged into a downward spiral. Studies show that women are increasingly falling into online gambling debt. In Sweden, a 2019 report from the Public Security Bureau found that among 45,000 online gambling addicts, only 64 were women. However, in the past decade, this number has risen significantly. In the UK, female gambling debts have doubled in the last 5 years. Li Fuangbin, a promising young nurse with a stable job and an innocent appearance, seemed like the last person one would suspect of falling into this abyss. But in reality, gambling and online betting platforms have countless ways to lure ordinary people into destruction. Once trapped, escaping is nearly impossible. So never trust any test-your-luck platforms. Stay away from them because they are not just games of chance, they are a form of psychological addiction. Once you fall into their grasp, your life will be buried. That concludes today's case. What do you think about this crime? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to never miss another chilling case from Grim Murders.